back to DrShoCares podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have my medical school colleague and friend, and also world-renowned nutritionist, Dr. Michelle Braude, here with us to talk about nutrition for women's health. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Tunu, Dr. Sho. So lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I can't believe how far back we go.
Yeah, it's amazing. We were just talking about it. It sounds like we've known each other for nearly 20 years, which
Yes.
is absolutely insane. Now, I have to tell you all about this amazing lady. So she qualified as a medical doctor at University College London. Which is also where I went, obviously. During her medical study, she actually completed a BSc degree in nutrition at King's College London. And then being passionate about nutrition and healthy living, soon after graduating, she decided to set up her own nutrition practice, The Food Effect. And this was set up in 2012 and almost immediately became hugely popular thanks to the results and success of many happy clients. So Michelle combines her knowledge in the field of medicine and nutrition, as well as her passion for cooking and all things food to help clients with medical conditions, as well as those looking to lose weight, improve their diet, and optimize their overall health and well-being. She also has a special interest in fertility nutrition, nutrition for the menopause, and PCOS, and has worked as a nutritionist for several private clinics in London over the years. She runs a popular online blog, The Food Effect, and she is regularly featured as an independent expert in The Times, The Daily Mail, The Telegraph, Hello Magazine, Women's Health, Marie Claire, Healthy Diet, Birdie Magazine, and Healthy Food Guide Magazine. Just amazing. She is the author of best-selling book, The Food Effect Diet, which was serialized by The Times UK in January 2018, and then she launched her second book, The Food Effect Diet Vegan, in January 2020. And also she's a mom to a 4-year-old baby girl called Sienna, who's also a food lover. I don't know how she does it all. We're so delighted to have you, Michelle. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words, and the love and admiration is mutual. And I don't know how you do it all, so we don't.
Well, as we say, it's really it's a juggle, right? But we have support of family and friends, and somehow we make it happen. So we're so delighted to have you. We're going to be talking about nutrition and women's health, as we said. So I think let's just dive right in, right? Let's start with the first kind of staging question, which is, how does nutrition play a crucial role in women's overall health, especially during life stages such as puberty, going on to pregnancy, and also the menstrual cycle and menopause?
Sure. So it's obviously an area I'm so passionate about, but I really do find it so fascinating because obviously nutrition is crucial for everyone, men and women, but women, our needs change so much throughout life. And even during those stages, during puberty and during pregnancy, during, our cycle, our nutrition needs change. So really being aware of that and what we need to optimize our health and well-being at each different stage is so crucial and really so interesting. So just a brief overview, starting off with puberty, we really want to support like growth and development. Hormones are changing so much. Bone development is really crucial then. And also the brain is, hormones play a part. The brain is growing and developing so much in teenagehood. So really key nutrients there. We're looking at protein, calcium, vitamin D, and iron to support the body's growth and development, and also mental health. And then in pregnancy, we've got the mom's nutrition needs and the growing baby, which is also incredible and so fascinating. So we know folic acid is so important in preventing birth defects. Also iron, calcium, again, protein, and also omega-3s for both the baby's brain and the mom's. And actually, just to say, there's been really interesting studies I've read recently in terms of postnatal depression. They found that moms who didn't consume enough omega-3s during pregnancy were more at risk. Their brains actually prioritized giving the omega-3s, which our body doesn't make itself. We need it through the diet. So the baby's brain, growing brain, takes precedence. So those omega-3s from the mom's brain goes to the fetus, and that's a big risk of postnatal depression. So really omega-3s, play a massive part in that, which we get through our diet. And then menopause, it's such a changing time for women's bodies in terms of symptoms, weight, mood. There's so much, and nutrition really plays a big role then. So like healthy fats, looking at calcium, vitamin D to support the bone loss that happens during menopause, and estrogen levels falling. There's a lot that can be done with diet to improve those difficult symptoms. So I really find it fascinating, and nutrition is so important for women.
Amazing. And I can't wait to do a further deep dive. I love what you were saying about omega-3, and it's such a crucial nutrient, and
Yeah.
it's often not talked about sufficiently,
Yeah.
right? So I really want us to kind of let people know, how can you actually get that omega-3 in your diet? What are good sources? So we'll be talking about that. Now, I know the word superfood has been abused.
Yeah.
But just talking about some of the nutrients that you mentioned, can you give us some specific sort of dietary recommendations or foods that are particularly beneficial for women's health, with some of the nutrients that you have mentioned are useful?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, it has been used and abused, and people think superfoods are just like spirulina powder and goji berries, which, I'm not saying those things aren't healthy, but really our, whole natural foods, day-to-day staples are superfoods themselves. So just to name a few off the top of my head: dark green leafy veg, so spinach, kale, broccoli, amazing sources of vitamins and minerals, high in calcium, vitamin D, and these are really important for bone health at every stage of life, and also antioxidants to protect the cells. Then calcium-rich foods. So if you eat, it's not just found in dairy, as we commonly hear, but obviously dairy foods are great. So I'd be looking at, natural sources like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, other cheeses, whole milk or semi-skim milk are amazing sources. But if you don't eat dairy, then things like tofu, sesame seeds, so like tahini sauce is amazing, delicious on roasted veggies, salad dressings. It's an amazing source. Also flax seeds, which the ground form is best. It's absorbed much better than whole flax seeds. Ground flax seeds are amazing in the menopause because they really support the falling levels of estrogen. They're a phytoestrogen, so they act on the same receptors, on the estrogen receptors. So they can really improve menopausal symptoms like hot flashes, the mood swings, the weight gain. So ground flax seeds, also soya. We commonly hear to avoid soya and that it's bad, but actually things like natural soya milk, soya yogurt are great sources of calcium and also other vitamins and minerals. And I think just really looking at a whole natural, colorful diet. So, lots of fruits and vegetables. We don't need to overcomplicate things and, go to a health food store. Really just things you can find in a supermarket: fruits and vegetables, good protein. So, if you're not vegetarian, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy. If you are vegan or vegetarian, there are lots of plant-based sources, so beans, legumes, pulses, lentils. are great sources of protein. Nuts and seeds are amazing for women's health. We really need fats in our diet to support hormone production, because our hormones are actually made of fats, and our cell membranes, as you all know, are made of fats. So we don't want to be scared of eating healthy fats. So nuts, nut butters are amazing. Also avocado, olive oil. So yeah, healthy fats, whole grain carbohydrates, and good protein and fruits and veg. And I think that's a great place to start.
I love that. And I know you love your nut butters. Anyone that follows at the Food Effect Doctor will know that Dr. Michelle Braude absolutely loves her nut butters. And,
and avocado.
Yes, and avocado as well. And the great thing about nut butters is you can actually find ones that don't have added sugar or salt. And there are many brands that do a really good, nourishing nut butter, and you can even use it for children in their foods as well. It's a really great source of protein, and you can use it as a seasoning to put on all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And Dr. Braude, if you follow her, you'll see she uses it in so many different ways.
And also one thing, just looking at you is reminding me that it's amazing for glowing skin, because I'm just seeing your skin. And so it's not just the hormonal complicated stuff, it's also aesthetics, which, you know, anti-aging, glowing skin, and seeing you is a picture of that. So
you're glowing too. We're both glowing.
And we're both almost 40.
I know. We're looking at 40. Not far now. But yeah, keeping it tight. So speaking of hormonal balance, you've already talked about the necessity for fats for hormonal health, but let's do a deeper sort of dive into the nutrition impact on hormonal balance, because we know obviously during the women's cyclical monthly pattern, the hormones change during the months. What dietary and also during menopause, perimenopause, we have the crazy hormones going everywhere, and then in menopause we have obviously reduced levels of estrogen, progesterone, and sometimes in some women also testosterone. So what dietary strategies can women adopt to support their hormonal health?
Sure. So yeah, like you said, it can be all over the place at different stages of life. And I think it's really important to say also, our hormones and female hormones don't just control our cycle, our fertility. It's also our mood, our energy levels, our, you know, everything, how we feel, our weight, play a part. So it's not like, you know, the thyroid controls tiredness, and the, you know, female hormones imbalance are only for women's health thing. It's really to feel our best, to look after our moods and our energy levels. So in saying that, I think the best place to start with hormonal balance for all these stages is actually gut health, which so many people think is just for digestion, is just if you've got gut issues. But actually the gut is where hormones are processed. You know, old hormones are gotten rid of, new hormones are processed and everything. So if your gut health is in bad shape, so, you know, bloating, indigestion, constipation, even acid reflux, it's actually a sign that your hormone health won't be great as well. So, you know, people tend to focus, like I said, that female hormones are just for that stuff, and gut health is just if you have digestive issues, but actually it's all linked. So we really want to optimize, and especially with the work I do, our gut health. And what you can do with that, plenty of fiber. So fruits and vegetables, whole grain carbohydrates. You know, women especially are often scared of eating carbs, but they're so important. You know, brown rice, sweet potato, quinoa, even whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, even white basmati rice is a whole grain and super healthy. So we really don't want to avoid carbohydrates, because They're amazing sources of fiber and also B vitamins, which are really important for hormone production. So looking at our gut health and our microbiome, perhaps supplementing with a probiotic if needed, but really seeing, you know, if you are suffering with constipation or bloating, those things do need addressing in terms of your diet in order to have hormonal balance. So I think that's something people often don't know, but it's really important. And a healthy diet supports a healthy gut.
I love that. And, you know, we actually are going to have another episode talking about the vaginal microbiome and its impact on women's health. And I think we're also going to have a little conversation about the gut microbiome in that talk. But I love that you've actually brought this up because you know, as you say, digestive health is so intertwined with our well-being. And often when we're under stress or anxious, one of the first signs is problems with our gut. It's almost like that gut check is really a part of our well-being. And so everything is so interconnected. And you know, here at DrShoCares, we're so passionate about the bio, the psycho, the social, and it's all inextricably linked. And in fact, we know that with our guts, if we don't feel balanced in our guts, then our well-being can be greatly affected, and vice versa, right?
So fascinating.
It's so fascinating. And you know, there's stuff that we understand and there's stuff that we're still trying to understand, particularly, but we know for a fact that the gut microbiome and the impact of that on our well-being and our health and our physical and mental health is really, really important. So what Dr. Braude was saying about having a wide variety of foods, including fiber in our diets, trying to make sure that we're eating different colored foods from fruits and vegetables will help develop our microbiome. And I know she mentioned that, you know, for some people, it might be worth taking a probiotic. Now, obviously it's best to try and get that from your natural nutrition.
Yes.
But again, that's something that some people might consider. And as you say, it impacts our hormonal balance and our nutrition. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. Just to jump in, you're so right. And I always say, you know, vitamins, minerals, you know, we often do need a supplement, and maybe we'll talk about that, of certain nutrients do need supplementing. But definitely with probiotics, it can be gotten through the diet. So things like Greek yogurt, sauerkraut, kefir, pickled vegetables, the sourdough bread, even amazing sources of natural probiotics, and you can get it all through your diet.
Yes, amazing, amazing. And I always say, you know, Greek-like, try and avoid, go for the natural Greek yogurts, because that's the one that contains the best quality nutrients, because often the Greek-like have added sugar and things in it as well.
And it's also an amazing source of calcium and
exactly
bones.
Exactly. So there's so many benefits to Greek yogurt, for those who obviously take milk. Now, are there any particular nutrients or supplements that women commonly lack in their diets? And how can they ensure they're getting enough?
Yes. So this is a great one to follow on, because like I said, you know, I'm all for getting everything through food first. But there are some things we need to supplement with, and especially women. So one would be, the one supplement that I tell almost everyone to take is vitamin D, because, you know, I'm sure you've read, or, you know, the audience, that it's mainly through sunlight that we get it. And obviously here in the UK, we're a bit lacking in that. But, you know, even if you live in a hot country, they have found that most people, unless they supplement, are deficient in vitamin D because they're not out sunbathing every day. You know, nowadays we're all in our cars, we're all indoors, you know, we don't live a natural outdoor lifestyle as we should. Well, at least speaking for myself. So vitamin D, you can get it through foods like egg yolks and oily fish, such as salmon, but you really need to eat like 10 pieces of salmon a day. So it's unrealistic. And vitamin D, as we said, is so important for bone health, hormonal health. So really men, women, even children, I tell to supplement with vitamin D, especially in the winter months, but likely all year round. Another one is iron, that for women especially, commonly deficient because of periods. If you're losing blood, you're losing iron. And then this is a generalization, but most women I see don't eat a lot of red meat, which I'm not a big advocate of anyway, because the health downsides that come with eating too much red meat. So I tend to tell women who are low in iron should take an iron supplement, even a low dose one. You get great ones that are sprays that bypass the digestive tract. You spray in your cheek and it absorbs straight into your bloodstream, so there are no side effects. And iron also really helps to boost energy levels, prevent tiredness, fatigue, shortness of breath, all things like that. So I do recommend an iron supplement, and you can get it through food. Lentils are a great source, pulses, dark green leafy veg, but it's not as well absorbed as red meat. So I think for women who are having periods and don't eat a lot of red meat, I would recommend an iron supplement. And then other things are individual, but I would say if you're vegan or more vegan, you might need to look at vitamin B12, which is usually found in animal protein. And this is also important for hormonal health. But those would be the main ones.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm a huge advocate for vitamin D, because even in my own personal experience, before I started taking vitamin D daily, I have noticed a big difference in my energy levels. And so, I mean, on average, you can get it from the pharmacies. I mean, even Aldi sell a vitamin D supplement. Yep. So it doesn't have to be anything super expensive.
Yeah.
It just needs to be, and we normally say take about 1,000 IU a day.
Yeah.
Which is around 10 micrograms. I think that's the equivalent. And that's if you're not, if you have a diagnosed low level, then the doctor may recommend that you take a higher dose. So always seek medical advice on this if you're worried about your low vitamin D. And similarly with iron, as Dr. Braude was saying, it's really important that we think about whether we might be deficient, especially as you're saying, within those years where we are actually having periods, because we're losing blood, and it doesn't even necessarily correlate with how much blood you're losing. So you may not even think I have heavy periods, but you may still be iron deficient, because each person is different. And so, if you're feeling tired, it's worth getting a blood test, but it's also worth considering that if you're not getting enough iron in your diet, that you are considering taking a supplement. And I know that the traditional tablets, the ferrous sulfate, the ferrous fumarate, can cause quite big problems with the gut. So as Dr. Michelle was saying, there are alternatives. Plus, even with those ones, you can take it alternate days rather than daily, and that can help increase absorption. And you should also take it with a vitamin C. And that helps with the absorption as well, because for some people, if your iron is really, really low, then you might need that. Now, rarely, if you're not absorbing, some people may then need an iron infusion, but that's uncommon. But that's something that you if your iron is really, really low, you can obviously speak to the doctor about, and that may be something that's applicable to you. But again, these things are common that we see. B12 and folate as well, if you're vegan, as Dr. Michelle was saying. And often, quite a number of people have a condition in which they don't absorb B12. So even if they're getting in their diet, then they don't absorb it. So again, if you're feeling really tired, this is why a lot of my patients, I would often check their iron, B12, folate when they're feeling tired, thyroid, vitamin D, full blood count. So those kind of blood tests, we call it a tiredness screen, looking for common vitamin deficiencies that cause tiredness and hormonal problems like thyroid function problems. So again, with B12 and folates, depending on the levels, you might need regular injections, particularly if you're not absorbing, or you just need an oral supplement. Of course, you want to try and get as much as you can from your diet. That is the optimal situation, but certain people might need, and that's obviously something that you need to see your doctor about.
Yeah. Sorry, one thing, Dr. Tunu. It's very good you mentioned a very good point that there are such affordable supplements, because it drives me mad to see, on Instagram, you have all these people promoting, iron spread for £60 and vitamin D for, crazy amounts. But really the one I recommend to all my clients and private clients is a £3 spray on Amazon, the vitamin D and the iron. And I've actually tried so many, and thankfully, I'm sent lots of supplements, including the expensive ones, and I found the best ones to be these sprays. And like you said, so important as well, vitamin C if you're taking iron, and if not, for our immunity. But I have great, really affordable recommendations, and if anyone wants to message me on Instagram, I'm happy to share them.
Thank you so much. It's one of my pet peeves as well. Like, especially when there is no evidence that the really expensive ones have any significant difference. It's the same thing with probiotics. I'm like, well, try and get it naturally. If you can't, just the normal brand from the pharmacy is absolutely fine. You do not need to be spending 30, 40, 50 pounds on probiotics. And same thing with supplements. It's really trying to encourage people that these things are accessible and affordable, rather than putting onerous costs on people to get these supplements. So thank you for sharing that. Now it's time to kind of talk about the relationship between nutrition and the mental health. We have talked about a little bit of that when you were talking about omega-3 and postnatal depression, which was actually quite eye-opening for me because I didn't know about that. But I think let's really think about how does what we eat affect our mood, stress levels, and overall well-being?
Yeah, I find this so fascinating, and I know I say this and it's my work, so of course, but really, our food and our mood are so strongly linked. And I think as women, we often think, I shouldn't eat cake because I don't want to get fat, or I shouldn't have this because, just associate what we eat with weight. But really, I think a bigger incentive is that, junk food and too much sugar. And I'm not talking about a piece of cake on a birthday, of course, it's all about balance, and, you can enjoy a dessert every now and then. And I'm not saying to cut out all pleasure in your life, but, really eating too much sugar, eating processed food affects your mood, it affects your brain, and studies have shown this. It causes, it increases your risk of anxiety, irritability. So sugar, first of all, talking about the bad. So, too much sugar, too much processed food, unhealthy trans fats, which are totally artificial. They're, man-made in a lab. Things like hydrogenated vegetable fats found in, heavily processed food and takeaways, they really have adverse effects on the brain, which affect our mood and mental health. And I think it's something similar to saying, we can get our vitamins from food. A lot of times I think people are quick to worry that they have depression and anxiety, and I'm not saying those things aren't real things, and of course, medication has a part, but often the first place to start is like, even with, I see with my clients, they switch to more whole natural foods and cut out the muffin and the pastry every day and the bag of crisps and the Mars bar and the Coke, and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better, my mood improved, and I'm less irritable with my kids and my husband. And, that's also the first place to start for those sort of things. And then looking at the positive side, what we do include, so like we said, the healthy fats, we really, it helps keeps us full and satisfied, which makes us less irritable and happy. And also our brain, I actually heard this in a podcast, our brain is 60% fat. So we need those healthy fats to keep our brain fueled and firing well, and our mood good. And also carbohydrates, like I said before, healthy carbohydrates, unrefined whole grain carbs, and sweet potato, they are the source of serotonin, which is our happy hormone. And that's why often when people go on low or no carb diets, they become really irritable and moody, and they're not giving their brain the fuel it needs to make serotonin, which is our mood boosting hormone. So I would say really making sure you're eating healthy carbs in the right portion sizes, of course, to balance blood sugar levels, to prevent weight gain, but carbs, healthy fats, and avoiding the bad stuff can go such a long way in optimizing our mental health.
I love that. And the thing is, the lifestyle is the fundamental thing in advising people about their mental health, because it's what you eat, it's the physical activity, it's actually spending time in green spaces and in nature. All of those things work together to actually make us feel better. And what you eat has such an impact on your mood. So I'm often telling my patients, whether it be perimenopausal ladies or women who suffer with premenstrual syndrome and premenstrual dysphoric disorder and all the other women's health conditions that can impact mood, that yes, there's medical treatment that's needed sometimes, and it could be hormone replacements or sometimes luteal phase antidepressants or whatever else is needed. But lifestyle is fundamental, and what you eat is so important. But then again, many of us have a very unhealthy pattern with food, because when we feel stressed or anxious, a lot of us have a reflex and run towards unhealthy food because that's a comfort for us. And it's almost kind of trying to break that cycle and thinking, how can we turn to something that's a healthy option? So I have started, when I'm feeling really anxious, I've started going for a walk in the park. And thinking about, okay, I really need to be intentional about what I'm eating here. Because yes, it might be like, oh, I want ice cream, but actually, how do I feel a couple of hours after that ice cream? And I've now noticed the pattern so well that I might have the ice cream and then I feel even worse a few hours later, and that did not help me. So rather than doing that, I go for a walk, or when I'm going to eat, I'm intentional about eating something that is not going to give me a sugar high and then a nasty low. But again, it's, how did we develop our emotional management relationships with food and other unhealthy habits? So even now, my son's only 5. When he says, "Mommy, I feel sad," I talk about it. Okay, what are we going to do about feeling sad? I don't say, oh, come and have a sugary drink or some kind of cake or something. No, it's which a lot of us had when we were little. Like, oh, when we felt sad, someone's like, oh, come and have a sweet or something. Instead, I say, okay, do you know what? Breathe in and out. Do you want to hug? Do you want to talk about it? So we then, it's from an early age that we start to challenge that. But for those of us that weren't lucky to have that challenge or that support, because we didn't have the knowledge, our parents didn't have that knowledge, we have to relearn, right? How do we manage our emotions and our feelings in a healthy way? And I often talk about also things that bring that you enjoy, right? So talking about hobbies, having fun, spending time with family and friends, self-care, which is optimal. So taking time to just give yourself what it needs, give your mind what it needs. All of these things will feed into you wanting and choosing healthier food, right? because it's again a biopsychosocial relationship, and we need to, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen in one day. I'm still a work in progress. You know, I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's you know, my nutrition and my weight have been a lifelong struggle. So I'm not sharing something that I don't have to do myself, or I don't struggle with myself. And that's why I'm saying that it all ties in. It's about your relationship with food when you have emotional distress or when something has happened. And it's also about what you're eating. So it's almost like a chicken and egg situation. What you eat feeds into how you feel, and how you feel feeds into what you eat.
Yeah, it's so true. And I struggle with the self-care and the doing the right things myself as well. I was going to say, you know, I can tell you all the right things to eat for mood, but I know, like with me, sleep is my struggle. And, you know, thankfully I do manage on little sleep, and I've always been not a great sleeper, and I'm okay with it. But I've noticed as I get older, as I'm a mom, as I'm juggling more, I do need sleep now. And I struggle to be disciplined with it. And late at night, I'll also want the sweet foods, and I'm tired and I should just go to bed. And, you know, I'll go in the kitchen, and it's really breaking those patterns. And also to reassure women, it's normal when your body makes you think, I need chocolate, I need the ice cream. You know, scientifically, it's because those foods, they do give us that big boost of serotonin and dopamine. So if your body, or if you haven't eaten enough all day and you just get home and want to raid the cupboards, you know, your body's actually working to think, like, what's the quickest way I can get those sugars in, those fats? And the quickest way is with the high fat, high sugar foods. So when you crave those things, it's actually a normal scientific response, but it's just the more we give into that, you know, you, like you say, you feed that cycle. So like, I know with me, when I'm tired at night and I haven't had a break in the day, it's just, I should go unwind and go to bed. But, you know, sleep is my struggle. So I put it off and I go downstairs and I do other things, but I'm really working on it. And like you say, all these lifestyle things, they're really what impacts our mood the most. Like sleep as well. Sleep, nutrition, exercise is everything. And, you know, the nutrition I have down better, but the getting out in nature, the exercise, I don't do enough of, and I need to motivate myself. And I do work on it daily, but we really, I think me and you, we weren't raised, you know, I often say I have the most amazing parents, and if they listen to this, I love them, I adore them. I know you're also so close with your family. And, you know, I'm so grateful, and I had a wonderful childhood. But I often say to Mom, why didn't you make me go? I was the youngest. Why didn't you make me go to sleep? Sleep's so important. And, you know, you read the books now. I don't know if you've read Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep.
No, I haven't, but I will check it out.
Really fascinating. So it talks about the brain development, and for kids and teenagers, and how important sleep is. And it is. And, you know, I didn't sleep a lot. And I said to Mom, why didn't you make me sleep? And she's like, we didn't know about it at the time. And it's true, even gut health. We didn't learn about this in medical school. We didn't think like our gut health, our microbiome, like we didn't know. And it's all new, but it really changes the way we think about looking after our health.
Exactly. And yes, sleep is one of the pillars. So it's sleep, eat nutrition, physical activity, and stress and mood management, making sure that you're not carrying too much, which is part of self-care. All of those things work together to be kind of like the pillars of support. And then you have that family and friend support, because we're not an island. We need people, and we need positive support in our lives. And all of that can then be the underpinning of a solid foundation of good mental health. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have struggles. Like, you know, people have all sorts of things, anxiety, depression, bipolar, all these other things. And sometimes you need medication. I mean, some people struggle with ADHD. Again, some lifestyle factors like what are you doing on your phone and things like that are really, really important, because we should also be monitoring what comes in and having good boundaries. So it's a very complicated picture, but again, maintaining kind of those pillars of nutrition, physical activities, spending time outdoors, making sure that you're sleeping well, good stress management, having the support of family and friends, all of that will stand you in good stead, even if you have to have medication for your mental health.
Yes, for sure.
Now, we're just going to talk about a couple of conditions. So one of the conditions is sort of osteoporosis, which I think is really important because women who are perimenopausal and menopausal become higher risk because of the reduction in estrogen levels. But I also wanted us to talk about PCOS. Now, the reason why is because this is a condition that's close to my heart. So I'm curious because I've got PCOS, I've lived with it my whole life. And, you know, I know what the how changing my nutrition and lifestyle has helped with my symptoms. And it's a journey, it's an ongoing journey, but I really wanted us to kind of talk about that. So yeah, over to you. What role does nutrition play in these issues?
Sure. I also have PCOS, just to say. I don't have so many of the typical symptoms, but I do have it on a scan, and I've been aware of that since teenagehood. So it's also something I've managed over the years. So yeah, osteoporosis, and again, the low bone density, you know, it's more and more being diagnosed in women of their 20s and 30s because it's asymptomatic until you have a fracture. So unless you have a bone density scan, you know, most women aren't aware of it until it's too late. And we can't really build, you know, at the menopausal level, it's too late to build more bone, but there's a lot that can be done to prevent it getting worse. And it's so important. And like you said, the falling levels of estrogen, you lose bone protection. So calcium and vitamin D are so important. And we spoke about the foods for calcium and taking vitamin D. And even more important, going back to the supplements, is to supplement with vitamin D, even more so than calcium. And calcium is best to get from the diet rather than supplement. And also we spoke about Greek yogurt, just to say there's great plant-based alternatives for those who are dairy-free. I'm always happy to recommend to anyone, but there's great soya Greek style yogurt and other fortified ones. And then in PCOS, it's really important. I think the fundamentals with nutrition is to balance blood sugar levels, you know, to prevent those spikes and crashes, and also becoming insulin resistant, which then doesn't help the condition. So the best way to do that is, again, whole natural foods, you know, minimizing refined white carbs, refined sugar, eating lots of fiber really helps to balance blood sugar levels, and also the healthy fats that I spoke about. So the nut butters, the avocado, all the things I love, nuts, they really help. Incorporating healthy fats with every meal and snack really helps to stabilize blood sugar levels. And you don't have to, I think some people think if they have PCOS, they have to cut out carbohydrates altogether. It's definitely not necessary, but I would say sticking to healthy carbs versus refined white carbs, and having those healthy fats, and also having a good amount of protein at every meal.
Yes. And I think also when it comes to the healthy carbs, it's actually also considering the portion sizes. And in fact, what I started doing was I bought these bowls from Amazon where you can actually calculate it. It has portion sizes for the carbs, the vegetables. Do you know what? Like, I've actually got them in my kitchen. You just Google or Google or go on Amazon and look for portion control containers. And literally that's how I portion out my food, so that I'm not eating more than the carb amounts that I should be eating. And then they have the section for protein and they have the section for veg. So it really does help you think about your food prepping. Obviously, if you can do it without but you know me, I'm a simple person, so I need help.
No, that's really helpful. And then you don't have to stand with the weighing scale.
Yeah, because you just have the sizes. So that's really, really helpful. And you know, basically, I've noticed that since I made a change, because in my house now we don't buy, well, apart from basmati rice, which is Dr.
Yeah, it's
Michelle has
great.
given the okay, we
Yes.
don't buy the normal white rice. We buy the whole grain rice. We tend to buy the whole grain bread. I mean, sometimes we sin and we buy the Nigerian bread, which is delicious, but not good. But generally speaking, we try and buy whole grain bread and, you know, try. So I think also we try not to buy any snacks and stuff in the house except healthy snacks, so that it's not something that you can run to because it's not there. And that's how I've tried to help myself with the polycystic ovarian syndrome. Obviously, different things will help different people, but that's kind of what works for me. If the ice cream is not in the fridge, then I can't eat it.
Yeah.
But I think also, sorry, you were going to say.
No, afterwards I have to share a funny memory I actually had last night.
Yeah, carry on.
Food related. And I remember coming to your dorm to study, I think when we were probably 19 or 20, and you had the cinnamon grahams. I just remember,
Yes.
curiously cinnamon, and it's my favorite cereal, but I will not buy it. Because if I have that, even as much as like sugar doesn't tempt, you know, I love my healthy eating, I love my healthy snacks, but that curiously cinnamon cereal is my weakness, and it's pure sugar. And I'm not saying I would never have it, but I will not keep that in the house because I would eat the whole box. I still remember, I think I ate it all when we were studying.
I used to love it. I discovered it in America,
Oh,
and then
it's
I was
amazing.
like, boy. But anyways, I don't buy
I
it
think
anymore.
that's so bad.
Suffice to say, I don't buy it anymore. I have porridge instead for my morning breakfast. Because, you know, again, you just, if you don't buy it, you just won't eat it. But you know, when Dr. Michelle was talking about calcium, there is actually a calcium calculator. And again, you can give this a Google, and you can put in what you're eating. So it has a whole list of different foods, and then you can estimate your weekly intake of that food. And then it'll give you a calculation to say, okay, you're actually eating enough, or whether you need supplementation, and then it will tell you how much supplementation you need. So that's actually really, really important, particularly. So I often give it that link to my perimenopausal ladies and my menopausal ladies and my postmenopausal ladies to check their calcium intake. Now, Dr. Michelle is an expert on fertility nutrition, and I know that that's something that a lot of people are curious about, right? Now, I personally struggle with fertility, and some of you might know my story on that. And I'm obviously grateful to be blessed with my son. So that's another thing that I'm curious about. What are the things that you would recommend?
Sure. So I won't go into it in too much detail because there is a lot, you know, and also at different stages and depending on what. So if someone's struggling with fertility for PCOS, it would be those recommendations. But then, like, let's say doing IVF, there are lots of tips actually for the different stages. So whether you're doing, you know, egg collection or transfer and implantation, there are loads of things that nutrition really can make a big difference. But I would say it's pretty much similar to the recommendations I gave for general hormonal health. You know, again, the healthy fats, I know I keep going on about it, but they're so important because really, if you're struggling with fertility, you want to optimize your egg health. And it's also, again, the cell membranes, the health of the cell membranes, the health of the DNA of the cell, of the eggs. So those healthy fats are really, really key because our bodies can't make hormones without them. So you want, and those omega-3s, which our body doesn't make themselves. So, you know, oily fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, tinned, regular sardines, mackerel, tinned salmon even is an amazing source. They're also an amazing source of calcium. I think the highest food in calcium you can get, especially with the bones, if you mash them up. So healthy fat, good protein, eggs are incredible for fertility, avocado also. And just going back to omega-3s, if you don't eat fish or you're vegetarian or vegan, ground flax seeds, walnuts, and pumpkin seeds are great sources, vegan sources of omega-3s. So you don't have to worry if you don't eat fish. And yeah, just good protein, lots of colorful fruit and vegetables, because that's antioxidants, which again helps the quality of the egg. So a good healthy diet and minimizing the processed food and sugar.
Love it. Thank you so much. Now we're starting to come towards the end of our conversation. Now, obviously, we live in London, and our audience is, you know, a vast majority of people from some the UK, but some from other parts of the world. So I think it's important to consider if there are any cultural or societal factors that can influence women's nutritional choices and how we can promote healthier eating habits within diverse communities. So I'll give an example, like, you know, the Black community is very diverse in that, you know, there's people from Africa. Africa is, you know, a continent. So you're South African, and you grew up in South Africa, and that's very different from Nigeria, which is where I'm from. But then also the Caribbean community is varied, and what we eat in, you know, the Black community is diverse. But similarly in Southeast Asian community, there's people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, so many different countries. You know, some of the foods might be similar, but again, it's varied. Again, in the Far East, you know, Chinese, Japanese, like the foods are all very varied. So how can we encourage people to eat healthily whilst, you know, honoring their cultural backgrounds? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic because, you know, culture plays a massive part in food choices. Now, I'm from South Africa. I've been here for many, many years, 27 years. I moved when I was 11 with my parents, but still, you know, South African culture, there's great positives with the food. You know, I grew up with plenty of fresh fruit and vegetables and salads and avocado, but it's also very red meat heavy. So, you know, I grew up having red meat every night, which is crazy. I don't actually eat meat anymore, but not saying it's bad if someone does, but I think, you know, really food, also honoring that food is like love and enjoyment. And, you know, we can't take that away altogether. So I think I'm really conscious with my clients, looking at each person as an individual. And, you know, if there is certain things do need changing. So I would say, you know, if someone's eating really too much red meat, it's not good for heart health, cholesterol levels. You know, everything has a place in moderation. But I'd probably say minimizing that. But then, like, at a festive meal or a family meal or a gathering, I'd never say to them, like, don't eat your food that your mom's prepared for a family meal. Or, you know, also, again, I have a lot of Asian clients, Chinese, Japanese, and they have white rice every day. And for me to tell them to switch to brown rice, they won't eat that. You know, they've grown up with the rice and they make it deliciously. So with that, I would say it's, you know, managing portion sizes. Or maybe, so I think just looking at a way that, you know, not to get rid of culture and all enjoyment and heritage with food, because I think that's so important, but just balancing in a way that, you know, can minimize the bad, but keep it in and enjoying it in moderation and on the right occasions, and really honoring that.
I love that, because there's good in every cultural diet, and it's just maximizing that. You know, we have so many amazing foods even within the African diet. Like we have this thing called locust bean, which we often put in our vegetables, which is a really good source of probiotics, for example. And you know, the way we prepare our vegetables, if we could just reduce the amount of oil that we put into it, it can be really healthy. We put a lot of fish in our vegetables. Again, just kind of reduce. I'm talking about my Nigerian African diet. But so there are ways in which it can be modified. So we're still eating our cultural food. I often talk to people about, you know, we use something called palm oil in our cooking. Now, palm oil is solid at room temperature, like the original palm oil. So trying to get people to switch to olive oil can be tricky, because palm oil has a distinctive color and flavor that when it's added to our food. But there is a healthy palm oil. It's made by a company called Caratino. And basically, so I often say that to my patients, you can actually use that red palm fruit oil, which is liquid at room temperature, but still has the flavor and the color of the palm oil. So again, it's finding ways to think about our ethnic foods and think about ways in which we can make them healthy. You know, we have this steamed pudding that we eat in Nigeria called moi moi. And it's really, really yummy. But again, sometimes I make it with lentils because it's usually made with beans, with honey beans, and that's fine. Honey beans are perfectly healthy, but sometimes I feel like it's a bit heavy. So sometimes I make it with lentils. So again, it's experimenting with different things. So it's the same principle, same thing. I put olive oil in it, make it lighter, and make it with lentils. And then I've still got my yummy moi moi, but it's not as calorie dense as the original. So again, it's about being creative. You know, now people make all sorts. Jollof rice, which is the staple West African food. People make it with quinoa, they make it with bulgur wheat, they make it with brown rice and alternatives that, you know, are still enjoyable, still have the essence of the meal, but have a healthier alternative. So again, you know, honor your cultural heritage. I will never be about people not eating their ethnic food. Our ethnic food is not necessarily bad, you know, and there's no diet that is, except the Mediterranean diet, which is proven to be a heart healthy diet. That is the only diet that one can say, okay, there is scientific evidence that the Mediterranean diet it's heart healthy. But we can borrow principles from there. But otherwise, all other diets can stand to be refined, right? So it's again learning from, you know, healthy things, healthy principles, and then building that in, honoring your own cultural and ethnic healthy heritage from food and incorporating that into something that works for your own body.
Yeah, 100%. Love that.
So we are coming to the end of the conversation, and I know we've already kind of talked about intersections. So we talked about intersections a lot when we were talking about mental health, but just to kind of wrap it up now, so a lot of women, you know, worry about muscle loss, especially as women grow older, so in perimenopause and menopause, and, you know, even, you know, after pregnancy, changes in the woman's body, women are often, and, you know, I hate the concept of the snapback. We do not need to be snapping back. It takes, and it should take 2 years to recover from something, from giving life, right? So I'm really not about women putting pressure on themselves, but I also kind of want women to feel their best, because obviously those first 2 years when you have a new baby, you're on your toes, on your feet the whole time. So it's kind of just thinking about recovery, right? So in postpartum, but also thinking about, you know, when your body has gone through quite a lot in the change and stuff. So there's points in women's lives where, you know, you're recovering, you're thinking about muscle building, or, you know, muscle loss from, you know, maybe periods of relative inactivity, and things like that. What kind of nutritional advice would you give? I know a lot of people think about things like protein shakes and things like that. And, you know, people often think about healthy smoothies, and, you know, so it's just your kind of, you know, because something that could be relevant to the listeners, like what you think about those sorts of things.
Yeah. So definitely, you know, as we age, even if you are active, muscle loss is just a consequence of aging, sadly. And also the body changes after pregnancy. So we, at both those stages, really have increased requirements for protein. And I do find that most women I see, especially perimenopause, menopause age, don't consume enough protein. So yeah, really, really important to be conscious of that. I would just say really upping your protein intake, as you know, even from our age. And it comes down to personal preference. So, you know, if you can get it all without protein powders, you know, some of my lady clients love chicken breast and would eat like chicken breast for lunch and supper and tins of tuna. And, you know, it's very easy to get it through whole natural foods, even if you don't eat meat, you know, eggs, cottage cheese, you know, tofu. There's so many good sources of protein. It's not hard to meet your needs. It's just really about being conscious of making sure, because I think women can tend to just like pick at a salad or eat some crackers and not really get that protein in. So really being conscious of your protein intake. If you don't love animal protein, can be a bit harder. I'm not against protein powders and shakes. It really just depends which brand and which ones. There are great ones on the market. I actually use protein powder. I just find for me, I do get enough protein in my diet without it, but it just really helps keep me full. Like in my oats, I love oats, overnight oats or porridge, but I find adding that scoop of protein powder really keeps me so much more full and satisfied. If I just have oats with milk, an hour later I'm hungry. So I have the protein powder, nut butter, and also I have loads of recipes on my blog for like protein balls, protein shakes with all healthy ingredients that are super easy to make. And I think that's really quick and easy. You know, if you can incorporate like a protein ball for mid-afternoon snack, it's delicious. Honestly, the ones I make taste like a Snickers or a Mars bar, but there's no sugar, 10 grams of protein, and just a great way to up your intake. So check out my blog. I don't know if there'll be a link, but there
will be. There will
lots of
be.
recipes and the smoothies I make as well with the protein powder, and also getting those greens in. It incorporates all the ingredients, you know, I've said are important to eat. So it's like a win-win all round.
I love it. And I think that's a great place to end the conversation, because obviously with the protein, we can then use that in, you know, doing muscle strength training, which is really important to our longevity.
Yes.
And also for our bones and joint health, which is vital for our older life. So thank you so much, Dr. Michelle Braude, girl. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, and for your time. We are so, so grateful. So we will have all the information about how to get hold of Dr. Michelle Braude. So at the Food Effect Doctor, on all socials. She has a YouTube channel, she has her website and the blog that she's just mentioned. So all of that will be there. But to close, do you have anything you wanted to share as a closing statement?
Just thank you so much. And this has been, you know, listening to you and everything you've said has been really inspiring for me as well. And yeah, I think just, you know, as women, we juggle a lot, whatever stage of life we're at. It's not easy, and we just have to look after ourselves. And you know, the same to me. It's a work in progress, but thank you so much. This has been so enjoyable and inspiring to listen to you.
Thank you. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I'm so grateful to you. All right, then. We'll see you next time on DrShoCares. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.